Hi, it's Randall with Carter Hill Honeybees. Today is Sunday, March the 14th, 2021. It's around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But on my row of nukes right here, it's time for me to evaluate them and upgrade them to their 10 frame boxes. I want to evaluate each one separately and see if it's ready. Some of them may be ready, some of them may not be. And just to share kind of my thinking process here, I look at a colony of bees. Each one of these is an individual living organism. Each one is slightly different. Each one has different needs. They have kind of their own personality. So I kind of have an agenda when I go into them. I want to answer some questions. I want to know if they need, right now, at this time of the year, I know swarm season's getting close. Swarm commitment time for swarms that are not overfed like what I did yesterday, and when I caught that swarm I posted the video on. Swarms that are colonies that are in their natural process at this time are pretty close to committing to swarm, providing they're starting to get plugged out. That's probably going to happen within the next week or two, where they'll commit to swarm and then they'll go to rearing queen cells and then issue their reproductive swarm. So I want to be proactive. I want to stay ahead of the bees. When I go into bee colonies, I want to answer some questions. I really don't want to just go into them without no plan at all. So in these colonies, I need to know, are they ready to move into a bigger box? Are they running out of room? Do they have adequate stores? What's the condition of the brood, the young brood in there? I want to see all that. So anytime I go into a colony, I'm going to have some kind of questions I need answers. And I'm also going to approach it from the standpoint of each colony is slightly different. Their needs are different from colony to colony, just like with human beings, in such a way each person has their own needs and each person performs differently, and colonies in that manner are pretty much the same in that they are unique living organisms. So I'm going to get started here, and I'm not going to show each and every one of these, but I'll show one or two, maybe some differences here and there. Then I'll try to share with you my thought process on evaluating colonies and getting them ready for honey production. Some of these I'm going to move out to production yards as they build up, and some I'm going to keep here to make bees with and make splits as I'm trying to get my numbers up this year. This is a strategy I've been doing for a few years. When I become self-sustaining, and I'll probably produce a video on that down the road, explaining why I have all these nukes and why I've become self-sustaining. But basically, if you have drawn-out combs, I have several drawn-out deeps. You can take a 5-frame nuke like this that's doing really well, and get them in a box at this time of the year. And with all those open, drawn-out combs, they'll literally explode in population. Last year I had 2 or 3 colonies that produced 5 mediums full of honey. So I got a very good result with that. And that's one of the reasons I like to raise nukes every year by doing splits. I've put this off for years, but this year I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to learn to make my own queens. I've had a lot of issues in the past with queens, with super procedure, especially early queens. I prefer not to get any queens before late April or early May. They seem to be a lot better at that time. And I think us as beekeepers, we need to demand better queens by voting with our dollars, buying from queen breeders that's adequately letting their queens lay maybe 3 weeks or more. Even if they're a little more expensive, they're worth it. If you buy 20 queens and 10 of them supersede and they start falling behind, I mean, you wasted that money. So I want to get into rearing my own queens. I'm sure it's going to be a learning curve for me, but I'm going to tackle it this year. And I won't, if I have trouble, I won't give up the first time. It's going to take a lot to beat me down, but I think I'll succeed in the end. So we're fixing to get started, swap some of these boxes out, see where they're at, and get these ready for honey production and get some of them ready for bee production. All right, this is our first colony. We're going to check it out and see if it's ready. This colony here is about 4 years old. Kind of interesting story behind it. I don't remember exactly where the queen come from, but I kind of call this a survivor colony. When I did my first round of mite checks last summer, it had a 0 mite count. So I think it deals with mites pretty good. But it don't make no honey. It's never got out of a deep. It didn't even draw all 10 frames out. It will swarm 2 or 3 times a spring and then fill 6 or 7 frames up with honey and just sit there. So I'm gonna see if I can build this up and use it to make bees. I don't think I'm gonna have any chance of getting honey off of it this time. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this on the ground, get my 10 frame deep in place. This is a dead out box from a couple years, well, from last year, year before. I had some boxes I didn't even use last year. This could possibly even be in storage for 2 years. I'm gonna leave the best frames in here. So I got 5 frames in the nuke. I run 9 frames, so I'm gonna leave 4 in here and basically just set the nuke in the middle. Depending on what I see, I may move some of these frames about to provide laying room for the queen. So what I'm pulling out, here's the second frame from the wall closest to me. Looks okay, pretty decent amount of brood. There's not a big population here. Some cap brood there. Good brood nest, good nutrition. So I'll go ahead and ease that in. Now I'm gonna pull the frame on the wall out, which if it's full of honey, I probably, yeah, it is full of honey. Pollen on this side and then capped honey on this side. So I'm gonna move these 2 empty frames over and I'm gonna set this on the wall. So that right here will be 2 empty frames the queen can immediately take up and start laying in just as quick as the bees kind of clean it up in there a little bit, polish the cells. Kind of a spotty brood pattern. Of course, there's larvae in all these younger places. They're starting to plug out a little bit, but I don't see any indication of swarming yet. And by that I mean indication that they're going to initiate swarm cells. I don't even see a queen cup to this point. So I'm seeing brood and eggs, all stages of brood in this frame here. Same here, great brood pattern, lots of pollen. So this colony is doing pretty good. They appear to be pretty healthy. Pretty much at this time here in mid-March, where I'm at in northwest Alabama, bees have completed their spring turnover, meaning what that means is the colony is comprised almost probably entirely of young bees. I would say the vast majority, probably 95% or more of the winter bees have done perished and gone, and these bees are all relatively young. That's my guess. Now, I don't have scientific data to back that up. I know once they initiate brood rearing, basically 35-40 days is when spring turnover is, and we've done past that point. So I'm going to say the vast majority of these are young spring bees, which means the colony is young and vigorous. And once they reach that stage, they can endure a lot of stuff in spring, provided they're good and healthy. So I moved these 2 empty frames in. So that basically I just provided the queen 4 empty frames to start laying in almost immediately. And then this will finish out to 5 frames. So that leaves me with an empty nuke. I got some bees in here. I'm going to kind of look, make sure the queen's not in here. If I did see her, I would try to pick her up and gently set her down in the box, as I try to avoid shaking her if I can. But I won't spend too much time on this, so kind of bump the bees out into their new home and set it aside. Now right now there's an ample amount of pollen coming in, and we've had a couple of dry weeks, and a lot of years we do in March, but March is typically our wettest month of the year. But because we're fixing to have a weather pattern shift, and the next week is going to start raining after today. It's supposed to rain tomorrow all day just about. I'm going to go ahead and put some pollen supplement on here. So this will kind of help smooth over the potential non-flying days that's going to come up for the next week, because the next week is supposed to be wet. We could even have some pretty rough storm. So this is kind of the being proactive here. It's a small cost to keep this colony going when they can't fly. The nurse bees will shut down pretty quick producing jelly. They'll start cutting it back, and that can affect the colony health slightly. And to me, it's well worth putting these on here, and the bees will consume this pretty quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this whole pollen supplement on here. This very likely may be the last one I do for the spring. Possibly one more. I'll just have to see and respond to whatever Mother Nature gives me. So that's pretty much it. I've got this hive set up and added the pollen supplement in anticipation of the heavy rains for next week. So now I'm just ready to button it up and let them carry on with their business. And I'll come back here in probably about a week, 10 days, 14 days, something like that, see where they're at. And which in the case of this colony, I'm going to keep it here to make bees with, so I'll wind up probably putting another deep on here or whatever I come up with to make them make some bees, because that's what I'm wanting out of these. I know I'm not going to get no honey out of this colony, I don't think. Okay, here's a split from last August. I'm pretty sure I started in this medium, and then it grew into the deep, and then I rotated it back. But looking in from the top, I think it's going to be honey bound up top here. We'll pull the frame out and see. Well, actually not. It's got brood in this middle frame. The outside two have honey in them. But in this frame we have a little band of pollen across the top. Capped brood, some older larvae ready to be capped in the middle. So this is pretty good overall. There could be a little bit more pollen up here. You got honey on the outside edges. And kind of the same thing on this side. Some drone brood there on the bottom. But overall, this colony is getting pretty good nutrition. I'm pretty happy with its progress. So I'm going to deal with this colony in the same manner. I got a medium and a deep to deal with, but I'm pretty much going to take the same approach, and I'm fixing to demonstrate what that's going to be. So I'm basically just going to kind of spread it out and give the queen opportunity to lay in both this medium and the deep once I get it reconfigured. So but for right now, let me get it set off to the side. Medium nuke is pretty heavy. A lot of bees in here, man. Tremendous amount of pollen right here. This frame is heavy with pollen, and this side's got almost entirely capped honey. Looks real good. Colony's got great resources. So I'll put it out here on the wall just like it was in its original configuration, and I'll go ahead and move two empty frames over and get that out of the way. Now I'm going to fill the cavity in with the nuke frames. Well, this colony here, a lot of capped brood. I see a few young drones. I see a young drone out here. So they're starting to emerge a little bit. Now I'm kind of glancing around. I'm just kind of checking my brood. I'm not really hunting for the queen, but if I spot her, that's fine. I am looking along the edges. I'm trying to be careful not to accidentally mash her, but I'm not really looking for her at all. Haven't seen any queen cups on these frames. Kind of surprised at that, but I'm happy. That means I've gotten here in time. I'll go ahead and move my two empty frames up, because I got one frame left in there. Go ahead and give them another couple puffs. It's been a couple minutes. I usually try to give them a puff every minute or two. You see those bees up top of the frame staring at you? It's a good idea to give them a puff or two, run them back down, because they're pretty much in defensive mode when you see that. And this is kind of like the other frame. Now this is on the south side of the box, so there's not really much honey. Both sides of this frame is pretty much packed full of pollen. Well pleased with this. There's not that much honey down low, but that's not really a big deal, because the medium over here sitting on my side, it's got a lot of honey in it, so they're in good shape. Now I haven't seen any mites on any of my drone larvae. Now I know that don't mean I have no mites, but it means to me that it's probably, my mite count's probably really low at this time, but I'm sure there's some mites in there. I'll probably in about a week, maybe 2 weeks, I'll go around and do some spot mite washes to see where I'm at, and that'll kind of tell me how my oxalic acid vaporization performed that I did in mid-December. I started around the 10th, and I did a vaporization for 3 straight weeks. I've done it 3 times because I've been no treatment, so I was being very aggressive this time. So based on what I find out later this summer, I may only do it twice in December, but my goal was to try to get the mite numbers as low as possible to start out spring with. I think that is very important to get the mite levels as low as possible to start the spring out. All right, so I've got my deep configured like I want. So I got honey and pollen, 2 empties, my brood on 3 frames, 2 empties, and then a frame of pollen. So I'm going to set my medium up here, and we're kind of going to do it the same way. And you may have to do it slightly different. It depends on how they've got it configured in there. Usually in the spring they build on the south side, the sunny side of the box. The brood nest is kind of focused over there, so you kind of want to leave it on that side to a point. If you put it on the north side, and they'll have to work harder to keep the brood itself warm. This will be a colony I'll get out in the production yard probably in about a week or so. This colony I think will have the potential to produce several mediums of capped honey come around July the 4th, late June. So I'm really excited about what I'm seeing in this colony right here. So I'm basically going to follow the pattern I laid out below. I'm even going to start the same way. I'm going to get this frame to the side out. This should be mostly honey, I would think. A little bit stubborn. Yeah, these are a little pollen, but this is probably 95% honey. So I'm going to put it out here on the wall. So this one's a lot lighter, and there's some brood in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 frames there, just like I did below. And then put that brood there. All right, I got plenty of room here now, so I'm going to slide these other 2 frames over and go ahead and take that one off the wall. Yep, this is pollen and honey just like the other side, so I'm going to put it on the other wall. Put my two empty frames, and then I'll fill the middle end with these 2, which are obviously going to have some brood in them, and they do. Brood, pollen, honey. This colony's in real good shape. So I've configured this just like below. Put the honey out here on the outside, 2 frames of empties in there, and then your 3 frames of brood. Your brood nest is in the middle. The queen's got tons of room. You're going to have 4 empty deep frames, then you'll have 4 empty medium frames. This colony right here is going to explode like you will not believe. This colony will be totally different a month from now. There's a lot of bees in here. So let's shake them off. So now I'm going to put the pollen supplement on just like I do in the other ones, except this one's a little different. We got brood in both boxes, so I'm gonna lift it up and put the supplement right over the brood. This gives access to the nurse bees to the pollen supplement from every direction and minimizes any issues with small hive beetle larvae. As big as this colony is, that should be gone in a few days. So there's one I just moved from a 5-frame nuke deep and a 5-frame nuke medium, and that's how I deal with transplanting it to a 10-frame deep and medium at the same time. I would say you don't want to do this too early. It's going to get pretty cold. That would stress them out pretty good. I feel pretty confident these bees will be able to deal with that pretty easy. So I've actually stressed them worse than that in the past. So, but I'm very optimistic about this colony. So I'm moving up the line now, and I've got a colony here that's really booming, and I want to take a couple minutes to show what it looks like. I've already removed one frame, the outside frame like I've demonstrated, honey and pollen, put it on the outside. Got my 2 empties here, 2 empties here. These are drawn out ready for the queen to utilize. But this colony is literally a week and a half from literally exploding in population. Just look at all that beautiful capped brood and the bees there. The resources, they've plugged it out pretty good, which I don't see any, I say plugged it out, I don't see any threat of swarming but at this point, but they're not far from it. Another week or so, this one would definitely be initiating swarm preparations. Tremendous, beautiful frame. When that right there emerges, it'll probably 2.5 to 3 frames of bee coverage. It is this side here is a little bit younger. The queen has come back and laid some eggs in the open area here. So they're in the process of emerging. The queen could be on this frame. I don't see her. But this side here, capped brood just like the other. So this colony is really about to take off. So here we have more brood and eggs. A lot of house bees here. I like how the bees are calm. They're not running all over the place. They're not trying to get me. This is what a healthy frame looks like. You got honey in the corners. You got a big, nice band of pollen around the top. Very good nutrition in the bottom of the cells of the young brood. Very impressive frame. So got that in there. Here's the 2 more frames of empty drawn out comb. And then finally the frame that's on the wall. Good deal of, well actually there is a little bit of brood in there. But it's easier from the heat on the south side or the sunny side of the wall, so they tend to start their brood nest out on that side. And we got a little bit of capped brood right here. Now if I was concerned about it getting cool enough with that gap in that brood, I would offset it a frame or 2 to that side. But there's enough bees in here that they'll take care of it, I believe. But that is an option I have. I could kind of offset everything that way and let them build back this way as it warms up. So that is an option to keep in mind, and this is another reason to wait as kind of as late as you can to do this. All right, after about 3.5 hours of work, almost all the colonies transferred over into 10 frame. The ones that are remaining needed a little more time. So those 2 nukes right there, the mountain camp, and then number 50 right there, it's pretty weak. I'll try to boost it in a couple weeks. As we move down the line, though, the rest of them was in pretty decent shape. That nuke right there was pretty weak. I'm going to try to boost it one time, see how it does. And then the rest of them ready to go. The ones with the brick turned up to where the holes are facing front to back. Those are going to be my colonies I'm going to designate to making bees, so I'll have no trouble coming up with 10 of them. I've actually got 11 selected out, including the one on the utility trailer. So I'll either go with 8 to 10 of them, and then the rest I'll put out in honey production. So I should have 12 to 14 new honey production colonies. In addition to, I think I have a 32 out there already. So that should get me up. If this all works out, it'll be the most honey production colonies I've ever had. Real pleased with what I saw today. So we're fixing to wrap it up, and I got to get down there and get all them nukes right there put up out of the weather and organized, get them ready. I'll be using them in a few weeks probably for mating nukes once some of these others get built up. So that's kind of how I rotate it in and out every year. And this is all part of being self-sustaining. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video today, and we'll see you next time.